Hello and welcome to another video. Today we are talking about the differences between easy and legendary difficulties. Thank you for Halthus for writing this up on the Steam forums. He actually has a stat page which will show you real quick. Show you all this, which is barely legible, which will confuse me and also probably you looking at it. It's not pleasant to die. But here's some general things that you may not want to know for difference between legendary and easy difficulty. So first off, legendary difficulty only allows you to autosave when files, which will happen when you retreat, when you get attacked, when you press the tick in the post battle screen. Make sure your decisions about captives, or make your decision about captives in the post battle screen. Uh, Make a decision after a siege victory. Press end churn, AI's churns. Even when you attack, I think there's an autosave. Um, in the battles, for legendary difficulty, you can't see the enemy's info easily in battle. There's no contextual tooltip. I don't know what that quite means. I'm used to having a unit card up on the side. Maybe there's just like regular tooltips. An enemy unit no more than 600 meters away will be hidden from sight. That's not necessarily true. You will not be able to use your camera at long distances. But that doesn't mean 600 meters away is way. They'll still be seen. It's just there's more. Maybe the sight lines are used a lot more. There's no mini map. You can't slow mo, and you can't give orders or use camera when paused. So those are the general ways that they make legendary difficulty harder. So we are gonna actually move on to the actual effects that you get in the game, which makes these decisions happen. Where if you're playing on the higher tier difficulties, that you think about a little bit more, or you try to mitigate this, and this is why something like a Tyrion, full melee Tyrion, going one man doom stack everything doesn't work on legendary, but on easy totally works. All right, let's look at this. Player controlled lords and heroes get a 10% additional replenishment rate on legendary difficulty and on hard. So that means we get increased 10%. But as you go lower in difficulties, in campaign difficulties, you will get 2% for each one lower than very hard. So it starts at 10, hard is 12, normal is 14, easy is 16%. So that means you heal a lot faster after battle. So taking casualties doesn't hurt as much at lower difficulties. AI controlled lords, on the other hand, get that 16% on legendary. Then on very hard, it goes down to 14, then down to 12 on hard, and then 10 for normal and 10 for easy. Meaning they replenish more at higher difficulties. So that's something also to keep in mind. That army that you brought down to 10 units may be back up to 50 or back to full by time you turn over. So yeah, that's a big deal. Player campaign line of sight. I didn't even realize this was a thing. Apparently it is. They state that there's no data for legendary, so it's either very same as very hard or is unmentioned default value. But on very hard you get plus 40%, and it increases all the way up to easy, which is 120%. That is insanity. You get 120% on easy difficulty of campaign line of sight. That means you can see for miles. You can see Karl Franz taking a shit. Jeez, dude, close the door or something. He probably does have the door closed, but you're on easy, so you can see that shit. So AI can see all campaign except for except for enemies that are hidden. That's just a casual state. All player controlled units have 10% upkeep on legendary. Now this part I didn't realize was a thing. Apparently on very hard, and normal, it's all 0%. Which I kind of feel is a little bit false, but then again, we'll be talking about possibly also army upkeep, which will increase it a lot more too. But on easy, you get -10 upkeep. So if you're playing on easy, you're getting the easiest thing out of everyone, while all the rest of everyone else has to deal with 0 or +10% more. All AI controlled units have 20% upkeep on legendary difficulty. This is how on one minor settlement a faction can muster up 2 full stacks, and you are sitting at that. If you stay at the same one, you can barely have 5 or even 2. They get cheats, they get these upkeep reductions. It goes a little bit down on very hard and hard, but they said not certain about normal and easy ones, so they just placed it at 0% because it might be close enough to 0%. But there's a difference when you look at hard, very hard, and legendary. See, there's some things that are different here already. Like, the AI gets a lot more cheats, gets a lot more benefits for being at higher difficulties than they are at lower difficulties. All player controlled settlements have at legendary difficulty -8 public order, -4 on very hard, -2 on hard, and on normal it's going to be +0, and easy is you're going to get that +1. Now, if you're playing at the lower difficulties and you're like, man, public order is such a struggle, I have a question for you. Did you play before the update to public order? Because now this -8 isn't as detrimental as it may seem, but you're gonna get used to that. Your cities are gonna be negative public order for most of the points. So it's interesting to look at this and see the differences. There is a spike from legendary, which they are fixing in 3. AI suffers -80% casualties from all attrition. AI is always immune to attrition from horde or infighting. That means Norska, or actually chaos. So on legendary, they get -80% casualties from all attrition. This explains why I noticed there was a slight difference in how many casualties people take, which is something I didn't know, was that they get reduction in how many people die from attrition, or from maybe plague, or vampire attrition. This is very interesting. Apparently their default's -30, but they go all the way, they get +50 to reductions on legendary. So, interesting thing, food for thought is to think about this here. Plague has a minus on legendary difficulty, -30% duration and chance of spreading for the AI. Value isn't mentioned for normal difficulty, and so is this assumption. So they assume it's 0%, but as you can see, apparently the AI gets benefits for it being lower difficulty than on higher difficulties, which is interesting. It might also affect you for the plague. So this might be interesting. This is interesting. AI every turn generates +12 ritual resources in Vortex campaign, such as Scrolls of Katari. So the higher difficulties you go, the more ritual resources they generate, on top of whatever buildings they have to generate those resources. So this is why on Vortex campaigns, most people say don't, at higher difficulties, don't bother with doing the ritual. Focus on your army, focus on your civilization, because they're already going to beat you. So there's no point in trying to fight them. AI gets -80% public order penalty from slaves, dark elves. So yeah, no, I've noticed that. The AI doesn't give a care about slaves as being the dark elves, which, funny enough, it gets lower as the easier you go, which makes sense. Again, this is why Nagaron easily can become a giant, a powerhouse, other than the Black Arcs. So, something to be interested in. Slave decline rate is always -60 for AI compared to the player. I always wondered that. I always wondered that. Minus 60%. That makes sense. I was like, how does Dark Elves economy work as the AI since you need to get slaves, huh? Now it makes sense to get minus 60% right off the bat. So they just need to grab a building and technology and then they're fine. Meanwhile, we have to jump through hoops and all that to get that to 100%. Caster rights don't call slaves for AI. That is the biggest thing. That is the biggest thing that the AI gets as cheats for as Dark Elves. That explains why there's black arcs everywhere. I was wondering. This is explaining so much about Dark Elves. AI gets plus 10 influence per turn High Elves. And this is probably how... I don't think that plays too much into High Elves. AI units gain plus 500 on Legendary difficulty per XP per turn. That is huge. If you're playing easy or normal, they just get it from battles, but them getting it every turn XP makes them a lot stronger, which explains why they get a lot of chevrons, and this is why people don't do the melee stuff. A little bit. There's more down here, but this explains a little bit more because a higher chevron unit will beat your unit because they get some extra bonuses to melee attack and melee defense and leadership. And exhaustion if they're full chevrons. Full 9 chevrons. AI construction costs are modified by minus 80%. This explains why their economy is so crazily good. Yeah, no, they can build all those buildings for cheap. Except for on easy. Everything else they get like a reduction to. Like play on normal, they already get increase and reduction. They get the biggest jump. Jeez. AI never pays for colonization. Boys, we now understand why they go crazy for ruins. They don't need to pay the cost. Okay, resist to occupation for AI is plus 70% on legendary. Meanwhile, it is 10% for player. I assume the player suffers higher public order penalty for conquering settlements from AI on every difficulty. Meanwhile, AI does only suffer a slight public order penalty only if the campaign difficulty is easy. Yeah, okay. So the penalty, the like plus 30 or whatever, or minus 30 it would be technically, public order to basically bad public order you get from conquering a settlement. Yeah, no, they don't. AI barely gets to that. That makes sense. They already get public order boosts up the wazoo. AI recruitment costs are modified by 70% on legendary difficulty. This is why they can field an army with like little to no money. That helps also for everything. Easy, you guys have it the easiest time. Plus 0. You guys are probably the most balanced. For the AI, but whatever. You don't play the difficulty for things to be balanced. You play higher difficulties for them to be challenging. AI casualty replenishment rate is modified by 9% on the legendary. That's weird that this is small while this is oh wait, that's here Lords and Heroes. Oh, Lords and Heroes get more, huh? Interesting. AI has a plus 6 default global. What? Oh my gosh, this explains how they get so many units. So, me and my friend played a fight, and somehow I was dumbfounded that army was able to field like 10 units within one turn. And I'm like, how? How? You literally were just recruiting last turn, and I'm coming for that booty. How did you get 10 units? Now this explains why. They get plus 6 global recruitment and plus 3 default local recruitment capacity than you as the player would on legendary difficulty. And it looks like it's plus 2 is the default for easy. Interesting. Players' default global recruit capacity is always plus 3, and default local recruitment capacity is always plus 2. technically +3 if you +2 is the if you don't tax. If you tax, you get +3. You get 3 local recruitment capacity. So this is just default. So they just have 2 and 2. So they are weaker than a player it is on easy. Then on normal, they're in league with a player, and then at the higher difficulties, they get higher. Gotcha. AI settlements have 125 growth on legendary. This is why you kind of want them to build up those major settlements, and you just sit back and watch that go to tier 5, and then you grab it. AI hordes have +9. Oh, that's interesting. They get more growth for hordes. Huh. Explains why they're a little bit better, but not by much. So those were the campaign difficulties. I've been mostly talking about legendary because legendary is the most pertinent one, because as I said before, if something's good, if a strategy or something's good at legendary difficulty, it has a trickle down effect where it will be it would be good as good or better in other difficulties. So let's go here. Here's the battle difficulties. Now, legendary deals with very hard battle difficulty, as very hard is the highest battle difficulty. There's no legendary battle difficulty. There's only very hard, hard, normal, and easy. So it's a little bit more condensed, but we will take a look at these. So very hard battle difficulty, player controlled units get -4 leadership according to battle difficulty. So at normal you get 0, easy you get +4, and hard you get -2. Keep this in mind. This is leadership. This is your leadership. Meanwhile, the AI controlled units get +10, +4, +0, or -4 leadership according to battle difficulty. So a little bit the reverse, but they all go all up to 10. So those are the only two observable ones in unit cards. We mostly know this by unit cards, but just taking a look at this, hey, right now, you upping just Tyrion's leadership doesn't help. The AI has +14 leadership more than you, because on legendary difficulty, they get +14 more leadership than you, and on hard they get +6, because you have to count these both. And then normal, it's equal. Easy, you get +8 over top of them. Now, why am I saying it's +8 or +14? AI gets 14 more, or you get 8 more. That's because in a melee fights, a unit is going to make or break based on their leadership. And if a unit has 14 more leadership than another unit, that one with the 14 more leadership is unlikely to break compared to your units. So it is something to keep in mind when looking at the rest of these battles. So I'm going to just do this real quick, because we're starting to get to the comments and I don't want to go too much into the comments. AI units charge bonus gets 1.15 times. That's multiplied according to on very hard battle difficulty. And then if you look, its melee attack gets 1.5 times. AI melee damage is 1.5 times. And then melee defense is multiplied by 1.2. AI missile reload stat is modified by +20. I didn't know they get a reload stat boost. That explains why their units sometimes seem like they fire faster than mine for some reason. But if you look at this, AI has boosts to stats for days. And of course, normal's fine. But if you go anywhere above normal battle difficulty, you end up having AI being better than you. the melee defense is important, the melee damage is important, melee attack's important, charge bonus doesn't really matter too much, but you improving your Tyrion. Now, if the AI went full melee Tyrion, that means, and you go full melee Tyrion, guess what? Their Tyrion is better than your Tyrion. Flat out. They don't even have to go full melee Tyrion. They could go mix things up a little bit and not go full melee Tyrion. But you go full melee Tyrion, their Tyrion is still going to beat your Tyrion. Why? Because they will get flat 14 leadership boost over yours. They will gain more melee attack. They have more melee attack. They have more melee damage. They have more melee defense. And they have more... That missile reload doesn't matter. Which means he's already better than your Tyrion. Which means where you had to spend maybe 10 skill points, which is a lot, which is 1/4 of your skill points, then to just make it equalized. That's why if you boost like other units around yourself, say you boost archers, guess what? The archers can kill that Tyrion. Why? Because if you place your Tyrion in combat with that Tyrion, the AI's Tyrion, then you basically, and you have archers, and you boosted those archers, and you just be like, go on Tyrion, go fight him. Hopefully you don't die, you have your special thing. Woo! And the archers are shooting at him, that other Tyrion is going to die first. Because he's taking a lot more damage than your Tyrion is. Now, you may get friendly fired and all that, but that's how it goes. But you can probably beat that Tyrion by just shooting him with like 5 units of archers. Because you boosted them. Now, am I saying that's actually how it's going to go down? No. Tyrion's actually a good combatant, and he's most likely going to reach your archer line, and 5 archers aren't going to be enough. You need probably like a good chunk. And you probably would want to hit his other army rather than hit him. And this is why like Grimgor is crazy good as an AI in higher difficulties, because he's a one-man army now because of all these improvements. So yeah, just take a look at these. I'm going to leave the link to this community page. Sorry, I had a mind blank there. And you can take a look at yourself a little bit more, but basically, these differences, especially these battle differences, shows you why, as a player, some people play like with archer spams and all that, because there's no way your peasant farmhands are going to be their peasant farmhands, because their peasant farmhands are way better than yours, unless you're playing on easy. Otherwise, good luck, sir, you're gonna die. So yeah, this has been me. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If not, let me know why, and I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.